Is anyone doing March Madness right now? Anyone into March Madness? No? I'm in the right place. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna say something kind of controversial. I don't like basketball. I'm gonna say it, and if that makes you uncomfortable, if you don't like that, that's okay. I speak once every 6 months, and then Luke is gonna be back next week, okay? So you never have to hear from me again. But really, March Madness just makes me miss football. It makes me miss football. It became a family tradition in my house to watch Sunday football with Gio. Gio loves football. He loves watching it. He loves throwing it. He loves saying football, football, football. But we actually took him to his first Bengals game this year, and he loved it. I have some photos for you. There he is. Look at him. 18 months of pure cuteness. But he loved it. He and Luke were locked in on the game. Meanwhile, I had a friend with me, and we were eating a soft pretzel looking for Joe Burrow through our binoculars. Okay, so two kinds of people at the football game. There he is. Do you have the photo of the sock? There it is. There you go. He had to have some Bengals gear on, just some. Also with football, Luke has been really into fantasy football. Does anyone have a fantasy football team? Okay, at first, I'll be honest, I really resented it. I didn't like it, I was annoyed by it, but I actually grew to enjoy the entertainment. They had a young adult and youth staff league this year, and the punishment for the loser was that they had to go back and take the ACT. Austin Price, if you're in the room, he lost. Is he in here? Hey, Austin, what was your score? The 19, ladies and gentlemen. Can you believe that? You guys remember how depressing that was to wake up early and you go in and take the ACT? That sucks so bad. So don't lose next year, I guess. But like I said, we watched all the games, Sunday, Monday, Thursday. We watched it all. And I don't mean to be that girl, but I was there for two things. I was there for the snacks and I was there for the touchdowns. I want to eat something good and then I want to yell at the TV when they score. Now Luke, he yells at the TV the whole time. Does anyone else suddenly become a professional athlete when they watch games? Oh my God, how did you miss that? He was wide open. Why didn't you catch that? Run faster. Did you know that if you hop twice and spin around, you'll get the touchdown every time? I swear, men become professional athletes. It's like, well, then you get up there and do it. But no matter where you fall on your knowledge of football, whether you're a professional athlete or if you're like me and you just want to watch the team win, you know that in order for a team to win, they have to know how to pass the ball, okay? They have to know how to pass the ball. And oftentimes in our lives, I think that we can be a little like me. I think that we get so focused on the touchdown. We become so focused on our own life, on getting our own ball in the end zone. We become so focused on our own big moment, our breakthrough, our career. We become so focused on our exams, finding the person that we're going to marry. We get so locked in on a destination that we've forgotten that before you get to the destination, there is a journey worth enjoying. There are some things worth doing, and there are some passes worth making. The destination might be your focus, but what about the power of your everyday life that is supposed to be in play and making a pass to someone else? I promise this will all make sense very soon. But I want to title this message today, Power of the Pass. Because I believe that your life has the power to change someone else's life. You have something on the inside of you that doesn't have to wait for a defining moment or a platform or a touchdown or an end destination. You have the innate ability as a believer to pass on something worth sharing, and that is the good news. That is the gospel. You as a believer have the ability to pass encouragement. You have the ability to pass words of strength. You have the ability to pass an act of kindness. You have the ability to pass an invite to church. So then the question becomes, who are you passing to? Because if you're not passing to someone, then you are simply passing them by. And I want to look at the parable of the Good Samaritan in Luke chapter 10, verse 25. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is written in the law, he replied, how do you read it? And he answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You've answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself, and so he asked Jesus, but who is my neighbor? In reply, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, he passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came to where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. 'Look after him,' he said, 'and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expenses that you may have.' Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell in the hands of the robbers?" The expert in the law replied, "The one who had mercy on him." And Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." I wanted to look at the parable of the Good Samaritan because here we have someone who desperately needs help. But several people, despite being perfectly capable of helping him, pass him by. So not only does the Good Samaritan show us a good example of the power of our day-to-day interactions, but Jesus commanded us to follow his example. So 3 quick points, and then I promise I'll be done. Number 1 is if we want to discover the power of the pass, we have to stop passing by. Passing by says, I'm not going to be involved. I don't have time. I'm really busy right now. This doesn't have anything to do with me. I already have my core group. Church is for me. It's for me to get filled up. And we have a society that is more divided than ever because we have people choosing who they will stop for and who they won't. Instead of saying, I see that you're hurting, here's something that will help. Instead of saying, I don't care what you've done or where you come from, I have something to pass on to you. We have a group of people saying, I'm not going to stop for you unless you belong to my group, my beliefs, unless you contribute to my end goal, my dream, my. I'm going to pass you by. And we as the church have to begin to model something that the Good Samaritan modeled, which is you don't pass by because we have the power to pass on something that will make a difference. We have the power to pass on something that can heal and restore. And I think we as believers get confused sometimes because we think that sharing the gospel is Jesus' specialty. He'll get to their heart eventually. He'll convict them eventually. Or maybe it's just the pastor's specialty. If people really want to know about Jesus, well, they know where the church is and they'll find their way there. It's not all down to Jesus. It's down to the Jesus that lives in you and I being willing to not just pass by, but to stop and make the decision, I will not pass by this person without making an impact. We hold something that can genuinely help people, heal people, restore people. We cannot continue to pass by, but we have to pass it on. So who are you passing to? If we were to look at the life of Jesus, Jesus never passed by anything. Jesus passed a lot of places, he passed a lot of people, but he always passed with intention. He lived his life saying, I won't pass this place without making a difference. I won't pass this place without them knowing my love. I won't pass through this town without someone being helped or healed or encouraged. And Jesus lived his life knowing that even though he had an end mission, he lived his life with intention all the way to the end zone. And there are many stories that we could read about Jesus, but I think that the concept is best summed up in Luke 19, and it's the story of Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus the tax collector in Luke 19:1 says, Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man there was there by the name of Zacchaeus, and he was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short and could not see over the crowd, he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, he is gone to be the guest of a sinner. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have ever cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. Jesus said to him, Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham, for the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. Number 2 is if we want to discover the power of the pass, well, then we must be intentional when passing through. Jesus was not stopping in Jericho. He was heading toward Jerusalem. He was heading towards the cross. He was locked in on the mission that he had on earth. Jesus knew that there was a great cost that lied ahead of him. Can you imagine what would have been going through his mind as he approached the cross? I'm sure he would have been distracted. I'm sure he would have been worried. I'm sure he maybe would have been upset. I'm sure that his head would have been heavy with anxiety. And Jesus, knowing that, finds that he has to pass through Jericho. Turn to the person next to you and say, passing through. Passing through. Think of it this way. I have passed through middle school. I've passed through high school. I've passed through college. I might have been planted in the church the whole time, but my life has been passing through from season to season. I was in these certain places for a season of my life. Some of you were at a job for 18 months and now you're at a new one. Some of you started at one school and then you transferred to a different one. Some of you had certain friendships in one season and then you grew apart. You were just passing through. Maybe let's take it a step further and let's even look at our lives for a minute. As a picture of eternity. We could say that we're passing through this earth because our end destination is heaven. Somewhere in your life right now, you are passing through. So I wonder if in your passing through, if like Jesus, you are aware of the people that you're passing through alongside. I wonder if like Jesus, if you have an awareness on you, or whether you're so focused on your next destination that you see where you are as an inconvenience. You see student life as something to get through instead of saying, I'm passing through a place of influence. You see the job that you're at as a thing that says, it's a distraction from where I want to be and where I want to go instead of seeing it as a place of opportunity. There needs to be a switch on the inside of you that says, in this window of time, I get to have my life pass through their life, and I want to make sure that they know that I was here. Do the people in your life know that you are passing through with good news, with hope, with kindness, with encouragement, or do they see you as another person who won't slow down long enough to make an impact? Even Jesus had a big mission ahead, but he was intentional in his passing through. He looked up and saw Zacchaeus. He was in a tree. He wasn't standing next to him. And you can't look up if you've got your head down and you're just trying to pass by. You're just trying to get through. You're just trying to get to the next thing as quickly as possible. You look up when you're intentionally passing through, when you're scanning the room, when you're looking for the person who needs encouragement, when you spot the person that's down, when you text the friend that's on your heart, when you slow down, it allows you to be sensitive to what the Holy Spirit is putting on your heart. Jesus changed the heart of Zacchaeus while passing through Jericho. If you don't believe me that he did this often, I've got a few more examples for you. Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead while passing through Bethany. He showed the woman at the well forgiveness while passing through Samaria. He healed the lepers while passing through the border of Samaria and Galilee. While passing through a crowd, he healed the woman with the issue of blood. Are you seeing a trend here? Jesus passed through this earth and didn't pass us by. So who are we to approach our passing through any differently? Jesus had the mindset of, why wouldn't I make a difference? Why wouldn't I say something? And the choice is yours. You can pass through deliberately, or you can pass by, which, by the way, you also do deliberately. You have to look at your life and know, yes, I'm passing through, but I also know that I have something to pass over into the life of someone else. And you might be listening to me talk and you're thinking, how could I possibly pass on anything to anyone? Can I tell you that the enemy will try to tell you that you have nothing worth giving because he knows that what you have to pass over is worth everything to someone? I was a middle school small group leader in Legacy back in the day, and it was one of my favorite things to do, actually. But especially in middle school, most kids are dropped off by their parents against their will, or maybe they agree to come because they have a friend there, but it's not really their thing. And as a small group leader, I had this new member in my group. She was a 7th grade girl, and I remember meeting her and just knowing there was something special in her life. I, to this day, still cannot explain it. I just knew that she was different. And I can remember seeing her, and she was there for her friend. She was the one kid in the back row that was distracting during service, that like the ushers, like we have ushers that like tell the kids to be quiet and get off their phones and stuff during the youth service. And she was one of those kids that was constantly being called out to stop being distracting. She wouldn't come to small group. And I can remember God telling me or impressing on my heart to not lose sight of her. And I haven't really had God do that before, and so I took it pretty seriously at the time. And one day I made the choice that I was going to quite literally chase her down. After service, they would hang out in the parking lot with like fire pits, and she would hide from me. Like quite literally, she would hide from me behind the fire pits. And I just said, you know what? She can run from me, she can hide from me, but I'm gonna be relentless. I would literally chase her down in the park, and I would appear behind the fire and be like, come on, let's go to group. But I was gonna be relentless in chasing her down. I was gonna offer to pick her up from school. I was gonna offer to let her come hang out with me while I did things at church. Whatever it took, I just knew that I needed her to know Jesus, and I needed her to know that he had a destiny for her life. That girl today is completely in love with Jesus. She's one of our best worship leaders. She met her future spouse at church. She found her calling, and she's now a high school small group leader for girls. And I'm not saying that to make myself look good. I'm just saying I wonder if I didn't slow down long enough to listen to the Holy Spirit, would she be planted in church the same way today? I didn't know what it would do then. She was a 7th grade girl. I didn't know what God had. All I know is that something on the inside of me said, I have to reach you. I have to reach out to you. And when you know the power of the past, it will create something on the inside of you that says, I have to have that conversation with you. I have to get a coffee with you. I have something to pass over to you. I see that you're hurting. Let me take you out to lunch. Let me tell you about the God who restored my soul. So the question again for you, college night, is who are you passing to? All of our lives are better as a result of someone somewhere who stopped and passed something over. If I were to say to you, tell me someone who changed your life, it'd be someone who stopped and included you, who encouraged you, who gave you strength when you didn't have any. So when did we forget? When did we forget to spread the good news in our day-to-day life? And many of us, myself included at times, have forgotten the incredible gift that your life can be to someone else. And here's why it's so important for you to remember that. Number 3, what you pass over gets passed on. What you pass over gets passed on. Jesus knew this stop with Zacchaeus was going to influence way more than just one man. Zacchaeus would go on to make things right with those who he wronged. And then when they asked what changed, he would reply, I met a man named Jesus and he changed my life. The woman at the well went on to tell her whole town about Jesus. The lepers came home and they told their families of how Jesus healed them. And I want to speak to the reality of sharing the gospel for a minute because I think that I've maybe made it sound easy, and so I want to be honest with you. For me, there's a girl that I used to be really close with, and she fell away from God a few years ago, and she's been on a track to nowhere fast. Extremely destructive behavior, wants nothing to do with God, nothing to do with the church. And I know a lot of that is her being mad at God for some things outside of her control, but I keep having this tugging feeling that I need to invite her back to church. But I keep talking myself out of it. Many of you have been in that position. You know you want to say something. You know you want to say, hey, come to college night with me. Hey, come to church with me. But you just stop yourself. And you tell yourself, there's a better time. I need to wait for them to open the door. They know I go to church. If they wanted to come with me, they'd ask. Or maybe we stop ourselves because we're worried that it'll change the relationship. Maybe they'll think I'm weird. Maybe they'll block my number. Maybe they'll reject me and say no. Maybe our conversations won't be the same from that point forward. Maybe it's just better. This is one I tell myself a lot. I told you I'm being honest. Maybe it's better for my life to be an example than to be bold and ask. And sometimes I think we avoid inviting people to church because we're afraid of the rejection or we're afraid of plans falling through. But I want to talk about a statistic, and many of us know about the first part of the statistic, but not many people know about the last part. The statistic is that 82% of unchurched people would go to church if they were asked. That's a pretty popular statistic that a lot of people talk about. 80% of current churched people were invited by someone that they knew. Okay, so we know that it works. But here's the last part that nobody talks about. Only 2% of Christians have ever invited someone to church. 2%. Can you imagine how large the local church would be if we all said, I refuse to be intimidated any longer because someone's eternity is on the line? Can you imagine? That doesn't mean it's always easy. That doesn't mean it doesn't take persistence. Every time you invite someone to church, the enemy loves to get busy because he knows that you're about to do something that will change everything. Every time that you try and pass on the good news, there's going to be some past interference. The night they were supposed to come with you to church, someone gets sick, someone has a flat tire, there's been some kind of tragedy, there's a work conflict. The enemy gets busiest when the pass is about to happen. Why? Because once the gospel is in their hands, it's going to pass on to their family and to their friends and to their coworkers, and from there it's going to pass on again and again and again and again. And the enemy knows that what you're about to do is significant. He knows that that invite to church, that conversation is going to go way further and have way more impact than just that one moment and that one person. Luke was literally telling me this week about how his friend's barber got invited to church, and now he's so on fire for God that his entire family's going, and as he was cutting people's hair, he invited every single guy that sat in his chair to church. That one invite turned into 10 invites. So don't be discouraged, get encouraged. Don't let fear stop you. You have something that can change their entire life. All you have to do is recognize the power of what you have to pass on. And I don't want to look back at the season of my life of being burdened for certain people that only I have influence with. You can reach people that I'll never be able to reach. You have influence with family members that I'll never know. But I don't want to look back on this season of being burdened and knowing I've got to share the gospel and not knowing and knowing that I have something that can change everything for them and not even taking a chance because I rather keep the peace. I refuse. I can't do it anymore. And so here's what I want us to do, college night. I want you to imagine someone that you know right now that doesn't know God. And I want you to imagine that person finding God. Imagine what their life would look like a year from now. The hurts that would be healed, the bitterness that would be resolved, the mindsets that would change, the generational curses that could be broken. You see, without Jesus, there would be no Zacchaeus. We wouldn't even have known that there was a guy in the tree. And just like Jesus, you are the person that can make that person's story possible. Without you, we won't know about your coworker. We won't know about your classmate. We won't know about the person that you go to the gym with. All as a result of you just saying, I'm not going to keep passing by. I'm going to be bold and pass over the good news. Church, it's on us. It's on us to be those that live our lives with intention. So who are you passing to?